So my guest today is Kevin Nichols of Penumbra Solutions. And I know I have these under the cash flow investing page. This is a little bit different. I will admit that. Even Kevin will admit that. But there's a reason that I want you to see this alternative asset class. Now, again, let me read the disclosure. Neither Kevin nor I are your financial advisors. I may or may not have invested with this company that I'm doing an interview with. I may or may not have lost my own money with these companies. So please do your own research and understand the risk of whatever you invest in. Consider this to be educational and entertainment purposes only. Kevin, thank you for being here.
Howard, thank you. It's my pleasure.
Good. Can you tell me, I don't want to give away all the secrets of what you do, but can you give a little bit of backstory and then what it is and how you got here?
Sure. I'll try and give you the Nichols tour. We were financial advisors, my business partner and I, for 3 years, and we invested in a product called a senior life settlement, a fractionalized senior life settlement, which is where you have a senior citizen who no longer needs or can afford their life insurance policy. They raise their hand and say, hey, I need to get rid of this. There's no cash value to it. Perhaps somebody wants to buy it. And we would go with other people and buy the policy. We'd split that up amongst the investors. Perhaps there'd be 20, 30, 50 investors in a policy. And when the death benefit was paid, we all shared in the maturity. If there was a premium that needed to be paid, we all shared in the expense. And we had very good success personally with that. We had clients who were using it as well. And so we decided to set up our first private equity fund, whereby we would take all of our policies that we had, we put them together. I took my dad, he was our first investor. We had some other high value clients who all put their policies together with ours. And essentially when one person would have a maturity, we all got to win. We all got to share in that. And when one person had a premium call, we all would share in the burden of that. And it made it much easier. It smoothed out the cash flows, and it also smoothed out the yield curve for everyone. The beautiful thing about what we do is today is we pool money, we buy senior life settlements. Again, I say that the people, the policies, the insureds and the policies that we purchase, we don't go knocking on their door looking for them. They come to us. They're represented by counsel. If they don't have an attorney, we make sure that they get one, or we will provide one for them. That's a law. So they raise their hands. The policy has no cash value. We would then buy the policy from them. Perhaps we'd let them keep a portion of the death benefit for themselves or for their heirs. And we would put that into our fund. Then, depending on the length of time that it took before the policy matured or they passed, we would make the premium payments on that policy. And when they pass, we share in the death benefit. The fund owns the policy. We take the death benefit, and it is shared amongst our members of our fund pro rata. Whatever percent you own, that's the share you get. The expenses and fees are incredibly low. We charge 1.5% of the amount invested up front to reimburse us for setting up the fund. We set up the fund using a third-party custodian. We never touch the investors' money. We don't ever have access to it. And so all of that is handled by Bank of Utah. They're an FDIC-insured institution. They handle all of the money. They also handle all of the premium payments. We tell them which policies need to be paid, and they handle it. And then when there's a death benefit, they distribute that directly to the investors based upon their share or their percentage of the fund. Individually, my partner Jim and I, we both invest in every single fund as well. So as they say here in Texas, we eat our own chili. If you went across all the funds, we have 9 funds in place right now that we manage. We are the largest investors in total. We are not the largest single investor in any fund, but yet we are the largest investors in total across all 9 funds. We've never had a policy not pay. We've never had a policy pay less than we anticipated. We have never had a policy go into grace because we made the premium payment late, nor have we ever had a policy lapse. And we've never had a client lose a single penny in any of our funds. as it relates to this investment. So we've been doing this for now 10 years. We're on our 9th fund. The 9th fund is going to be closing here probably the end of next month, and we will then probably have another fund open, I would say by June 15th would be the latest. We try and do a fund every year. We can take only 99 investors. The maximum we can take in a fund is $25 million, although if someone came along and said, hey, I've got $50 million, can we do it? I'd probably say, yeah, we can extend that. But every year we do a new fund. They rely on what is called an SEC exemption, in that it's not a registered security. It is exempt from registration because of many reasons. The size of the fund is 1. The number of investors is 2. It's designed for accredited investors is 3. And the reason we're able to do that, to take advantage of that, is based upon the Regulation D, Rule 506B of the SEC laws, so that we can get to market on a very limited scale, fairly easily and inexpensively, so that investors can take advantage of it. If we had to register the security every year, it would cost us probably $250,000 at least in legal fees and accounting fees, and it would make this not a viable investment for clients at all. But since we don't ever touch the money, we don't have access to it, we are able to, minimize the expense that the fund has and that the investors have to incur, and maximize the yield that we can deliver. We target a yield of 10 to 12% annualized, net of all fees and expenses. The first few funds that we put together are probably in that 10 to 12 range. The last 5 funds that we put together are substantially higher than that, simply because we get better, we're buying better. The interesting thing about our funds that is probably different than any other life settlement fund, and albeit there are not that many companies doing what we do, but there are some, we specialize in buying policies from people who are very old, average age being 92. Now, why doesn't everybody do that? The answer is because when people get that old, the expense from a premium standpoint is very high. We can do that because our overhead is so extremely low. We can reserve, we reserve 35 to 40% of the money that we raise, we reserve for premiums for the first 2 to 2.5 years. Most companies can't afford to do that. They have to spend more money than that because they have higher overhead than that. And I could go into that in detail more, but bottom line is we're more of a boutique company. We do one thing, we do it very well. And it's been very profitable for our clients. Just at the end of last month, we sent out $1.6 million to investors. We've probably, in the last few years, we've probably sent out in the range of roughly $7.4 million to investors. It's done on a quarterly basis. What we tell most people is, when you invest in this, don't use the money that you're going to need for the next 8 to 10 years. You will not receive any distributions for probably 4 years. And there's a reason for that. Even though there will be policies that mature, we want to make sure that we replenish our premium reserve account so that we protect the policies that we have. And so we replenish the premium reserve account first. And then after about year 4, you reach kind of a tipping point where you've got enough money in the accounts to pay the premiums going forward, and you don't have the premium expense obligation anymore, and so you can essentially distribute everything that comes in. So even though an investor will typically start to receive distributions after about year 4, what we tell people is, look, be cautious, be conservative. If you know you're going to need it inside of the next 8 to 10 years, put it in something else. So it works out beautifully. Right now, our funds are averaging, if we have a $10 million fund raise, we're going to buy death benefits in the range of, say, $35 million. So roughly 3.5 times our investment. So the average investor can equate that to, if I put $100,000 into the fund, I can reasonably expect I'm going to get roughly $350,000 over the next 10 years, starting in year 4 or 5. Never be exposed to the market. Never exposed to any, interest rate risk or anything like that. So it works out very nicely.
Yeah, so really, and this is the reason why I wanted you to be part of this page, even though even though I'm very, very big on cash flow, I find this investment opportunity extremely unique because, the only two guarantees are death and taxes.
Right.
And I don't think you can figure out an alternative company to the IRS. And so you're like, okay, how do we do this? And you just call it the policy matures, which is someone has passed away and the death benefit is being paid out. And so this is not really a true cash flowing asset, like people may think in terms of rental real estate or tax liens or something like that. But Kevin just mentioned really well, the greatest strength of the investment niche is the insurance companies that you're getting the policies from. You're dealing with, companies that have not failed in terms of paying the life settlement and the benefits out. The biggest risk is really the time, because
Right.
you know how much you put in, you know how much you're getting paid out at the end. You just don't know how long that's going to take, and that determines your rate of return. Am I correct on that?
You are exactly correct. We know the day the fund closes, we know exactly how much we've raised. We know exactly how much death benefit we've purchased. What we don't know is when all of that will come in. So we're buying our growth at a discount, essentially. Every policy that we purchase is an American. I used to say A- or better rated company. Right now, there are probably over the hundreds and hundreds of policies that we own. I think we've got a handful of B+ rated companies, maybe 10 or 15. Since 1845, Howard, there's never been a B+ or better rated American insurance company that has ever failed to pay a death benefit or an annuity claim. So we're pretty confident. Now, to take that one step further, every one of these companies is a member of the legal reserve system. So if you think about banking, for example, with banks, we have the FDIC. And that's banks. Typically, an investor will consider a bank to be a very safe investment. CDs, of course, because of the FDIC insurance, which is the full faith and credit of the United States. Insurance companies have the same thing. It's just called the legal reserve system. But here's the interesting difference. How many times has the FDIC insurance been tapped? How many times has it been tapped in the last 20 years? Hundreds and hundreds of times. In the last 12 years, hundreds and hundreds of times. The legal reserve system for insurance companies in this country has never been tapped once. Never. And there's a very good reason. When you invest money in a bank, you put money into a bank. I don't know how familiar your listeners are with fractionalized banking. You put $100 in the bank has to keep $10. They're going to loan out the other 90. When you buy a $1 million insurance policy from an insurance company, they have to have 100% of that death benefit in cash on hand all the time. So what they're allowed to do with the profits is very, very minimal. They can't invest in the stock market. They can invest in options. They can do other things. But they have to grow their money very specifically, and it's very conservatively. So that's why if you took the top 10 insurance companies in America today, life insurance companies, you're going to find that they are stronger than the majority of any country. They are the strongest financial institutions in the world. They are far stronger than any banks.
Got it. So here's a tax question for you. And even
Sure.
though neither of us are CPAs,
Right.
does life settlements, does it have any tax advantages, I'm going to just say, compared to real estate?
Not really. No. The only tax advantage you have is one, when your money is invested. Say you put your money in. Say you put $100,000 in or $1 million in, and then in say 8 years you got back 3 times your money. Essentially, you're putting off that taxable event until you start to receive the money. Some people mistakenly believe that since I'm buying a life insurance policy, and because Life insurance is tax-free to the beneficiaries. Therefore, if I buy the death benefit, I become the beneficiary. It is now tax-free to me, and that is absolutely incorrect. It is not, because you don't have an insurable interest to justify the tax-free nature of the product. While the Supreme Court has ruled back in 1911, they ruled that if you own an insurance company or an insurance policy, it is personal property, it's private property, and you can sell it, no problem. In fact, that opinion was written by none other than Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes. It's called Grigsby versus Russell. But one thing that you lose when you settle a policy, when you buy the death benefit, is you lose that golden goose tax-free status of the payout. So if we receive money from a maturity, so a policy matures, we receive the death benefit, that money is then is taxable. It is passed through to our investors as ordinary income. So there is no tax benefit there. Now, if on the other hand, we have a policy and we've purchased it and we have decided to sell that policy before it matures for whatever reason, and we make a profit on that policy, that money is long-term capital gains, which of course is better, but that's really not the function of the fund. So one other thing, if an investor has invested with cash money, the growth would be taxed as ordinary income. If, of course, you invest through an IRA, it would be ordinary income as you remove it from your IRA account. If, however, you invest it using Roth IRA money, of course, it is never taxed. It's tax-free forever. One of the huge benefits of this fund is we have probably 80 to 85% of the investors use qualified money where they can. So if, say, for example, you had a client or somebody who was a professional and they had a solo 401k or a self-directed 401k, they can then roll that into an IRA. And then what we will do is help them to convert that to Roth. And we do that within the first 3 years or so of their investment in the fund. We'll help them to convert that to a Roth IRA. Now, that will trigger a taxable event. But remember this, by doing that, you're paying, say an investor invests $100,000 and his share of the death benefit is going to be $350,000. Would you rather pay ordinary income on the $350,000 or would you rather pay ordinary income on the $100,000? You want to pay the tax on the seed, not on the harvest. And that's the beautiful thing about converting to Roth while your money is invested inside of our fund. We can help all of your investors do that, or all their clients. It's a very, very powerful strategy. If you do the math, it can multiply rather quickly. Within 15 to 20 years, you can create literally a monster.
Yeah. What's the minimum investment to invest with your company?
Sure. The minimum investment is, $100,000.
Okay.
If an investor simply doesn't have it, and they want to get in at the end of a fund or something, and there's a reason, we'll look at amounts smaller than that.
Okay.
The minimum investment can be a combination of Roth IRA, traditional IRA, and cash. But generally, it's $100,000. Probably the average investor is about $250,000, but it doesn't matter.
Okay. Kevin, any final words? Anything to wrap up?
I could talk about this all day. The best thing to do is if somebody wants more information, they can email you. They can email me. They can also, we have an online video presentation that's very short. It's 12 minutes long. That goes over how it works. It's at thepenumbraplan.com, www.thepenumbraplan.com. It will ask who referred them. Have them just put your name in, Howard. And it'll also ask for a password. And the password is lowercase Penumbra. P is in Paul, E, N is in Nancy, U, M is in Mary, B, R, A, Penumbra. And then they can watch the video. If they want more information after that, they can enter their phone number and I'll call them, or they can, reach out to you. My phone number is all over that website, but if, they are someone wants to know how to reach me now, my number is area code 817-479-9770. We're here in South Lake, Texas, about 10 minutes to the west of DFW Airport. We're about 3 hours north of you, Howard. And my email is kevin@penumbrasolutions.com. We have a lot of information we're happy to send out, happy to answer questions, and be happy to hold their hand and explain this and how it works and why it's such a great investment.
Well, Kevin, I want to thank you so much for your time for, again, not a traditional cash flowing asset, but certainly one that has withstood the test of time. And I don't think people are going to stop dying.
Well, I guess that's a different problem, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. But again, thank you. I'm so grateful, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
I will. It's been a pleasure being with you. Thank you, Howard.